I'll start the tradition, if you don't mind.
All right, thanks. That's great. Renee. Oh. Okay, so okay, so Jim.
I'm Jim Rosenfield. I got married this morning.
Congratulations. That was great.
And that was that was important for you?
I think it's a
That
good
was-
thing.
That's sets everyone up to understand who you are.
I also think it's a good thing you didn't go last week because no one could top that, right?
No
No.
one could top
Saved
that.
it
That's
and-
great.
It didn't
That's
happen
great.
last. It didn't happen last week. It happened this morning.
This
Kathy.
morning.
Kathy,
Wow. Yeah,
you just missed Jim's statement.
I heard
Okay?
him.
You,
Other Kathy.
no, not you, the
Sorry.
other.
Oh, another Kathy.
Say it again. Say it again.
I got married this morning.
Okay,
Wow, congratulations.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
keep going. Keep going. Keep going. It's all downhill now.
Well, just to build on that, I was much too young when I got married the first time. So if anything, I have overcorrected it now.
That's congratulations.
It was a shotgun wedding.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The bride's father ran after Jim with a shotgun.
Yeah.
He can run pretty well for a guy who's 120 years old.
Okay, keep going. Keep going.
Keep going.
Yeah, no, I mean, come on, you have 2 more minutes.
I have two more minutes. All right, so I'm Jim. I've been to a number of Simon's courses. I've learned a lot. I always learn a lot. I'm very interested in the arts. My main art, I guess, is music. I'm not a musician, but I'm a great admirer and patron of musicians and composers, particularly contemporary composers. I'm on the boards of 4 contemporary music organizations. I was president of one of them for 14 years until just recently. And I commission music. I've commissioned about 25 new works, almost all from female composers, because music, unlike literature and in the visual arts, has been, or I should say, music has been even unfriendlier to females in those identifying as female than the other arts. So there's a lot of work that has to be done. And so one of my personal missions is to help with this work.
That's great. I would just say that I think the most major institution that you've been connected with is a group called MATA, MATA, which provides funds for compositions, contemporary compositions. And just to continue, to say works of art or literature or painting or whatever that you feel really got to you.
Okay, I'll talk about 2 recent trips to the Metropolitan Museum. One trip was I was kind of in the neighborhood and I just had a real desire to revisit the Renaissance. And of course, the past couple of years, it hasn't been as easy to go to museums as it used to be. So I had a great time going through the Italian and Northern Renaissance. It reminded me of a lot of things I already knew. And of course, when you're looking at great art, you always see something new. The Met is hanging things differently now. So of course, when a painting is moved to a new place in a new environment, it wakes up, it looks different. So I saw lots of things for the first time.
So,
That was,
Well said, well said.
thank you. So that was one visit. And the second visit was a show at the Met called Chroma, which is an effort to show Greek statuary in its original form. Originally, the statues, of course, had color. Yeah, so that's something everyone sort of knows. So a couple scholars in Germany have done a great deal of research, and they've made replicas of a number of the Met sculptures in the what they think is the original colors. And it's startling, it's shocking, because the colors are technicolor, they're bright, they're circusy. It's nothing like I would have expected. So I don't know if that's how it was or not. If that's how it was, it certainly changes one's perspective. I mean, we know that the statues in the Parthenon were never just these white things that we have now, but the colors are incredible. If you go to the Met website, the photos of the colored statues are all over the place. So you'll see what I mean.
Okay, great. So to continue a theme from last time, I mentioned to take notes. If someone says something that you think is interesting, write it down. And last week, someone mentioned the film Drive My Car. And it was a film that I had seen before. And in a correspondence with one of you, John here, he mentioned that film also. And last night, I was looking for something to watch, and I thought, why don't I see this film again, which I liked a lot. And this film is just brilliant. It's called Drive My Car. It is about art, and it is about theater, and it is about mortality. Mortality. And the first time I saw the film, I didn't pick up on all of the qualities of it, but it's based on a story by Murakami, a Japanese writer, and I highly recommend it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to just remind you to keep track of your emails, because that's the way I can get through to you. And if I ask you to just send back something quick to me that you got something, it's because I'm concerned that you don't have the right information. Okay? I want to remind you that the Diane Arbus exhibit continues until October 22nd. If you're located near New York or in New York, it's my strong recommendation is to see the exhibit rather than see the work online. Okay, I would try to see it in person, because then you can look all around and see the whole thing together, as opposed to seeing one image at a time.
I went to see it yesterday. It was really amazing. It was an experience. So thank you for recommending it.
Yes, it's a tough show. It's a tough point of view, but I think her point of view has a lot of force, and she backs it up, and I think it's a very logical point of view. It's unadorned and not idealistic at all. So I'm glad you went to see that. That's terrific.
Is,
Uh,
I agree with you.
What?
I was just going to ask whether this was, and I would assume not, but there was a show, I think at the Met, some years ago of hers, which I have to say I didn't like, but anyway.
Isn't this a
Well-
recreation of the MoMA show?
Yes, from the Museum of Modern Art.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, yeah, this is a recreation.
I think it was
This is-
in that.
This is a recreation of a show from the Museum of Modern Art. But Lucy, if you don't like, if you see the work and you don't respond to it, that's your call. I mean, it's,
Okay, fine.
yeah, I mean, it's not, there's not an
Where
obligation.
to go?
I mean, there's not an obligation to like what I like. I'm just saying, even if you write about it and write why you don't respond to it, that's fine. Okay.
I went to see it on Friday, and
Yes,
I thought it was interesting that they had the quotations from reviews of it.
Yeah.
After I looked at the exhibit, I went around and read those reviews. That made it interesting, but it also affected how I looked at the faces coming towards me as I left the exhibit and walked and took the subway. And also she was ahead of the times in terms of so many of the faces, you don't know if they're men or women. And today what the young people especially are
Yes.
saying about gender, and she really brought that out clearly in looking at people. I thought that was-
Francis, I had that same experience coming out of it,
well,
looking at people on the street. It's a very unsettling exhibit, and I've seen her portraits online and elsewhere in magazines and whatnot, but to see them close up where you really are looking at them and the precision that she's laid out each person, and the question you keep asking yourself is like, why, what are they thinking as we look at them? It's a very almost voyeuristic, except that they're looking right at us. They're just as quizzical about the camera as we are about them. Very, very unsettling.
yeah, that's very well said. John, do you think I'm right about viewing the exhibit in person, if it's possible, as opposed to seeing it on your screen?
Yeah, absolutely. I like I said, I've seen, if you had asked me Diane Arbus, I could call to mind several of her pictures, the kinds of things that I've seen in magazines. It doesn't do it. There's an emotional reaction when you see it that it's very uncomfortable. I mean, I can see why Lucy didn't like it. You don't feel, there's nothing warm and fuzzy. There's nothing like, oh, the human race. It's great. You're looking at them and thinking, oh my God.
So that's a segue into something that occurs to me about her show, is that in late 1960s, early 1970s, there was much going on in the streets all around the country, which had to do with civil rights and the war in Vietnam and all that, demonstrations and so forth. So her work is so transgressive because it doesn't take up the idea of a cause, or it doesn't take up the idea of a political movement. It takes us back to ourselves, okay, to who we are. And it almost is the opposite of joining movements, pursuing social change, pursuing political change. It's almost like who we are. Who are we? Okay, that's my take on this. She was also attacked very strongly for this point of view, and I think the writer Susan Sontag attacked her, and I know that a lot of people have thought about Susan Sontag's point of view. Lucy. Lucy.
Well, I think I remember seeing that part of the exhibit, and I don't know whether there were two different exhibits. The one I recall and that I didn't like was one in which she dressed up in multitude of costumes.
No, that's not her. That's not her.
You sure? Well, I think it was.
No,
I mean, maybe
no,
not that show, but
no, that's another photographer whose name skips my mind.
Sherman, maybe?
Abramowitz.
Cindy Sherman.
What's in a show?
oh, maybe
Sure.
that, maybe
Sure.
that
So
was it.
that photographer,
Oh,
I don't know her work very well, but it's fascinating in the sense that she dresses up as different people and she takes photographs of herself on and on. So she dresses up as a woman who's pregnant. She dresses up as a woman who's older, a woman who's younger, in all different kinds of outfits and costumes. That's a different person.
Well, I did see the Diane's exhibit, and actually I found it really interesting. So I was
Okay.
just thinking of the wrong artist.
Okay, okay. So, all right, so let's keep going. So now in rethinking my schedule, I felt that I was asking for too many things today. In other words, I thought that I could speak about all of the issues, all of the artists in The Artist and the Studio. And I feel that it would be super rushed, and I don't see the point of doing that. So I thought that I had conveyed this to you in an email, but to be clear again about this, I am going to change the schedule, improvise the schedule. So we're going to do The Artist in the Studio, my presentation, 2 days. Today, part 1, next week, part 2. And then the fourth class, you will present, okay? So some of you wrote, you have everything ready for tonight, you're all ready. Or some of you wrote, I've sent the slides, but I'm not ready. It'll be class 4, okay? Then you'll have more time, you'll develop your idea, you'll have more time. Okay, so I asked you to write an essay or to think of components of an essay. And I want to just go over some of that because I have a feeling that maybe it's not quite understood what I'm asking for you to do. So now what I have encountered in doing this class is that some people don't like to write at all. Okay? Something happened in school, something happened along the way, and they're very uptight about writing. So I don't want you to feel like you want to skip the class. So if you have trouble writing, then just speak and just speak off the cuff. Fine. If you want to try to write, and I think you should give it a shot, even if you have trouble writing, just give it a shot, see what happens. So an essay describes a subject or a point of view, well, describes a subject, uses information to describe a subject, and somehow within that information, it presents a point of view. Okay, it does, at its best, it does two things. It provides the articulation of information, and then it also says, I think something. Now, you don't have to say, I think. It could be just your selection of material is saying, this is what I think. Okay, so
Well,
now,
Simon,
yeah.
is this because you had, in your instructions, you had emphasized not going on more than 4 or 5 minutes. Or,
Yes.
I mean, I don't know how long I'm writing, but
Yes,
I-
yes.
so I deliberately kept it short, but I think,
yes. But in
but
4 minutes, in 4
I don't-
minutes,
but that's not an essay, I
No.
mean, what I understood.
I read what you wrote. It's a little short, but you could write about 20 lines, 25 lines. And if you speak the 24 lines, 25 lines, I'll bet it doesn't take you more than 3 or 4 minutes. If it's very pared down, okay? Because I've done that, and it's amazing how much you could say in 1 page. Really
But
amazing.
I guess what I'm thinking, I don't know whether I would have that much to say. I would want to get some intake from other people.
Don't say more than you have to say. Just
I
say
won't.
say what you feel. But I want to go over some of this. So I was trying to think of different elements that you could consider. So you don't have to consider every element, but here are different elements. So this is the way you would look at a visual object, a painting. So I wrote down composition, color, scale, form, poetry, emotion, paint, the quality of the paint, the quality of the surface, tonality, line, expression, space, the design, texture, empathy. Are you identifying, or is the artist identifying with you? Psychology, volume, does it have weight? Electricity, does it have a pulse? Is it exciting? Is it scintillating? Does it have what's called a frisson, like a zip to it? I write the depiction of the eye. I like looking at eyes. If I'm looking at a person, I generally look at their eyes. If I'm looking at a person that's a portrait of someone, I'm looking at that portrait's eyes. I find that interesting. I've met people who are students of mine. They looked at their noses. They looked at noses, okay? They looked at noses. I think I wouldn't look at the nose. I look at the eyes, okay? The nose, what's the nose, okay? It's the eye. So if you agree with me, it tells the ability of the artist, okay? It tells what the artist is conveying by looking at that eye. So I personally like that. I'm only saying what I like. The drawing, what insight does it give to you? What insight about color or the human condition or life does it give to you? What's the mood? What's the mood of the image? Okay, so I tried to write all these different things down.
Simon,
Yes.
I'd like to add one,
Sure.
and that would be, why did you pick those 2 pictures?
Yeah, very good. Very good.
And I say that because, just you gave us 132 pictures to look through, right?
And study analyses.
Good point. Good point.
You click,
Good point. I like that. I like that.
and some don't stick, and then some kind of stick, and then some really stick. And,
Yes.
and it's like, why does that one really stick?
Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, it's excellent. Excellent. Now, let me get a pencil. Okay, I got a pencil. Now, there's something that you should also know. In week 4, if you have a special something that evening, you have to leave at 8 o'clock, or you have to leave at 7:30. And you should tell me, because I'll get you to put to present first or second or third. And the reverse is you're going to come late. You're going to come at 7:30 or 7:45. Let me know, because then we'll put you on after that. Okay, but normally you're here. We're going to get to you. Okay. Okay. So are there any other questions? Okay, so now we're going to go on to the portrait, the theme of the portrait. So this theme goes back to the history of art. All of painting and drawing has this theme, from early Renaissance to medieval art, right through to 2022. It's a very fascinating theme. Many artists tackled this idea. It shows the artist in a private space. It reveals a great deal about the artist's personality. What are the concerns that the artist had? So what those concerns could be formal, like space. It could be poetic. It could be expressionistic. What are those concerns? So it's autobiographical. It's like a memoir. You are entering a diary or a memoir. So it is a take on the interior world of the artist. And in this presentation, I chose 1900 to 2022. 1900 to 2022. Now, here's one other thing which is personal. I could say clearly, no doubt about it, art saved me. That's Simon. Art saved me. Okay? So if I'm correct, it saves the artists that are depicted in this presentation. It saved those artists. How? How did it save them? What do these images convey about those artists and how they were saved? So what I'm trying to say is that I'm very lucky or very unlucky that I was saved to go in this direction. I heard a question. Lucy, you had a question?
Well, I was just thinking that, what about the possibility that an artist had been working on some very intensive project, and he or she comes into the studio and sees, maybe there's a mirror there, that person sees their face and they think, what the hell, why not just make picture? No particular emotional quality starting out, but for instance, I'm thinking of the Kata Kollwitz piece that I wrote about. And I wonder about how she came to this, because it is such a weary, sad face.
Yes.
And when she started it, did she realize that she was feeling this way? And so, I mean, I think it's a little different than being saved. It seems like it was an accidental exercise.
No, I'm not being clear about being saved. I don't mean her doing the portrait means that she's was saved. I mean that the calling that she had to do art saved her.
Oh, that I
In other words, the calling, the message that she received somehow that said, this is the path to take, saved her. And saved, by meaning saved, I mean gave her a life force, a reason for living, a devotion, it's almost a religious thing, but it's not a religion. It's not religion, but it's almost religious.
right.
Okay,
But you
so
also
now
have to have some talent.
what?
You also
What?
have to have some talent.
Yes, yes,
And make it
yes.
rewarding to yourself.
Absolutely. But I can't answer your question because she's not here for me to, I can't
Oh,
answer.
No, nobody's gonna know.
But she did many self-portraits.
Mhm,
Many, I would say at least 100. Many.
mhm.
And they are very melancholy. They are from melancholy to depressed.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, it was not a very happy time in history, if I recall it.
Yes, but you could almost argue that it may not be that she was responding to history. It may be that that's what was inside her.
Mhm.
But it's not like she just looked at a mirror. What those images are go very deep inside her. So
Yes, I felt that.
so that it's really not surfacey.
Oh, I didn't feel it. I felt opposite
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. All right. So is there any other question? So the way I thought to do this was Dean, who's helping me with this class, Dean and I prepared this so that you're going to see the images 3 across. And after we get this set up, you're going to hear me. And after we do, let's say we do five artists, and then I'll say, do you have a question? And you just ask the question. But I won't be able to see you, I don't think, unless Dean does something, and I'll be able to see you. But you can just say the question. Let me just free associate about the first 5. Okay, then we'll do another 5, then you ask questions, then we'll do another 5, and so on. I think that that's the best way to do this. Okay, oh, one other thing. I can't talk about this, but I put this together for a particular reason. And it wasn't so easy to put together because I kept on adding and adding. Then I thought, subtract, add, subtract. And so I finally arrived at this very big idea of the theme. So the theme is either the artist in the studio, the artist by themselves, or some aspect of what a studio would look like. Okay? So do you have a question? Alan, do you have a question? No? Okay. So let's do this, Dean. So you set this up. You know, this might be okay, just the way it is.
I can't see the third picture. I see
Oh, you can?
6 people or 5 people.
Okay, so set it all the way across then. Oh, what you have to do, oh, you see above the people, there's something called view.
Mhm.
Okay, so click on that and put on standard, standard,
I don't see.
okay? Okay,
No.
I don't-
now what's happened now is you see a bunch of people, and above the people, you see icons, and the far left icon is horizontal. Just click that icon. Now, in my case, I only see the 3 pictures.
I agree.
Is that
Yes.
okay?
That
Is that okay?
worked. That
That
worked.
works? Okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right, so I'm gonna start and we'll go for five of these. And then I'll get some questions, okay? So the first group is of an artist named Gregory Gillespie, 1936, born 1936, lives to 2000. Okay, so Gregory Gillespie's work is, I guess, very surreal, very much connected with magic realism. It's kind of a charged realism. And he spent, in a particular period of his life, he spent a lot of time doing self-portraits. And you'll notice in these self-portraits that you see still lifes, you see him painting, and you see palettes, and you see paintings that he's painted. If you saw these pictures in person, all of the pictures are painted in a different way. So on the painting on the left, the painting that he's working on is very much painted differently than his body. It's also painted differently than the fruit. It's same thing on the painting on the right, the far right. If you saw blow-ups of these, the details are fantastic, very, very acute. The painting in the middle is owned by the Metropolitan Museum, and that painting is about 8 feet high. So you have to imagine that kind of scale. The other 2 paintings are on the large side, but not as big as that one. And you see him at the bottom below the table, okay? Like a placard of him and his face and his body there. And then you see the accoutrements of his studio in the middle. When I send you the next, well, I'll just send it to you. Last term or the term before, I can't remember, for one of the classes, I did a conversation with the widow of Gregory Gillespie, Peggy Gillespie. And I know some of you saw that, but I know some of you didn't. So that that conversation was absolutely riveting and fascinating. So I projected a bunch of these images and she talked about them, but really she only talked about things that she knew. And she didn't make up things. It wasn't like, I know this, I know this. She talked in a very straight way. There's an intensity in his work that is what I respond to. It's very, very alive, like crawling alive. You could say that there's something like trompe l'oeil going on here, but this is well past Trompe-l'oeil into something else, to some other world. Also one other thing that is interesting in terms of how these paintings were done, they're painted on wood panels. So certain artists work on wood. I work on wood. I've done paintings on canvas, but I prefer wood. So painters who are more draftsman-like tend to work on wood. So Andrew Wyeth paints on wood. George Tooker paints on wood. And I think what it does is it gives you more exactitude. And also the textures can be built up the way you would like them. The textures are what you do and not what is the weave of the canvas. So the wood is built up with layers of gesso, which become smoother and smoother. And then the surface is immaculate like ivory. And then the painting begins. So all the textures come from what you put on the panel. Let's go to the second one.
Simon, can I ask a quick question and make a quick
Yes,
comment?
yes, go ahead.
I didn't do this when I looked at them first, but as we were looking at those three now,
Yes.
I feel like there are a lot of things about all of these that remind me of the Fulbright triptych. And I wonder if that's part of why you respond. So I'm just curious about that.
Who is speaking?
Kristen.
Oh, Kristen. Well, that's a very interesting point. And you're not the first person who's pointed that out. There is really a connection here. And I'll also send you, besides sending you the video of the conversation with Gregory Gillespie, I'm sorry, with Peggy Gillespie, I'll send you a video that took place at Summit, New Jersey, where my triptych was on exhibit, and there was a conversation with a art critic and poet whose name is John Yao. And during that conversation, he brings up, Kristen, the exact same thing that you did. Well, so yes, I think you're absolutely right. And there is a certain kind of intensity that is in these paintings that I believe is in my triptych. One thing that is really fascinating here is that when I was putting together another presentation on Gregory Gillespie, and even when I was putting together the presentation for the evening with Peggy, I looked up these pictures and I looked up their dates. And the funny thing was that the dates were after my painting. In other words, these were done after my triptych. And I was very surprised because I thought they would have been done before. I knew his work from when I was an art student in the mid-60s, and I really, really liked his work. And the thing about his work that appeals to me is that it's figurative, but it is fresh. It's contemporary. It's modern. And it brings to the figurative tradition something that is today. It's not like he's painting 1885 all over again, or 1890 all over again. There's something about it that is buzzing. And so did I answer your question?
You did. Thanks very much. Yeah, it
Oh,
reminds
okay,
me,
I'm-
it really, I feel like they have similar feelings about them. So
I'm glad you popped in and asked that. Keep going, keep going. Let's go to the next group. So these are three more, and he did many self-portraits. The one in the middle is very striking. It's almost as if he's seeing himself as Christ. And he uses the paint in this one in a very, very smooth manner. So it's very illusionistic. But in all of his paintings, the illusion isn't the end. That's the important thing. The illusion is not the end. In trompe-l'oeil painting, the illusion is what's there. That's the painting. What is interesting here is the illusion takes you through a portal to some other place. That's my opinion. I pretty much think I'm correct. Dean and I had a little discussion when we put this on about the piece of wood going across. And I don't know what that is. Dean thought that it might have been part of his easel. I'm not sure what that is. But you could see that not only are these intense, but he is intense. If you believe that this is him, this is one intense human being. And for David Jones, this is a person who got his money's worth on planet Earth. And I hope I'm in that company. I hope I'm in the club, but he is right there. And so, all right, so the next one. Okay, so this is the work of Faith Ringgold, and her dates are, she's born 1930, and she's still alive. So born 1930. Now, these are quilts that she did, and they're quilts, they're quite large. They're about 80 by 80 inches, 80 by 80. So they're quilts that are painted and then joined together. And the quilts consist of writing, images, and a story. And they're hung as a quilt. And these quilts were in an exhibit within the last 3-4 months at the new museum, and this exhibit was fantastic. She was just so full of energy and so much pulse and so much aliveness in it. So these three images have to do with a series of works that she did which are connected with visiting Paris. And so the one on the left is supposedly a visit to the studio of Matisse. The one in the middle, a studio of Picasso. And she has the Women of Avignon. You see that here. And then the third one, a visit to Gertrude Stein. And she has the painting of the Picasso painting of Gertrude Stein. And to the right and above, this fantastic painting of Matisse called The Blue Studio, which I believe is in Baltimore. Faith Ringgold is African-American, and I believe in the early part of her career, I can't remember where she worked. It might have been for the post office, or she It was not connected with art. Maybe she was a social worker. I can't remember, but it was, and then she really took a great risk and found something, found art. If you want to say it, art saved her. And she pursued this. And she's a strong, strong woman. And she's worked in various modes. But for the purpose of the theme that I've developed, these are the pictures that seem to relate to the theme. And visually, the pictures in the middle and the left seem, maybe it's because they're better reproduced, but they seem stronger than the one on the right. But they're all very interesting. And the most well-known picture of hers is a picture called Tar Beach. And it shows a family having dinner or lunch on a roof. And the family is kind of being a family and looking and talking to each other. And then the young child, who probably is Faith Ringgold, is floating across the sky. It's a wonderful, wonderful quilt, and there is a children's book connected with it. There's even a Tar Beach 2 that's connected with it. You should try to look that up. It's very interesting. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so the next one, it shows 3 of my works. We have some things to follow, but I'll just introduce these. The one on the left was an area in my studio where I did the painting that is in the middle. So that painting on the left was an area in my studio. That painting is about 8 feet high, the one on the left. The one in my studio, the triptych, is about 14 feet wide. And the one on the right maybe is about 5 feet wide. So I thought these 3 might represent the theme that I was developing. And for a while I had on the far right, a painting of shoes that were on the bottom of a wall. And that was also in my studio. I have some details of the painting in the middle. And for instance, you'll see a detail of the plate that is on the table. And you'll see details of some of the children's drawings. This is the painting that Kristen was referring to when she said that she saw a connection between my work and Gregory Gillespie's. And from my point of view, I take that as a great compliment. That's terrific. So let's see the next one then. Okay, so this is the detail of the painting that you saw before. This is a little bit bigger. And so just two or three things about this. I remember when I did this painting, my daughter was about 4 years old, 3 or 4 years old. And she came to visit my studio and she was standing near this painting. And I was back about 20 feet or 25 feet. And she called out to me and she said, Daddy, could I wash my hands in the sink? So I said, no, not in that sink, not in that sink. Okay, all right. So the second thing I wanted to mention is a fascinating one where for a while we had this painting in an apartment in Park Slope. And that apartment had a very big kitchen. And at that time, Renee was tutoring students. And she had a fifth grade student, about 9 or 10 years old, who she was tutoring. This boy, this was the first time he came to our place. He was very nervous, very fidgety. And I wasn't there. So he was very fidgety. And at one point, he said to Renee, could I use the bathroom? And she said, of course. And she was looking down at the book she was using. And then all of a sudden she looks up and she sees the student walking into my painting, a direct hit. So she says, stop. And he stops in front of the painting. And she said, no, the bathroom's to the right. So then later in the day, she was telling me about this. Now, I have an odd sense of humor. So I said to Renee, wouldn't it be funny if he actually walked into the painting and walked to the right? And then just after he did that, the doorbell rang, and it was his mother. Okay, and we ring the bell, and his mother comes in, and she says, "Where's Michael?" So I say to her, Michael is very smart. I think he's really a smart young boy. He walked into my painting. He went to the right, and we can't figure out how to get him out. But we think he's very smart, and we think he's going to find his way out. It could be a few hours. It might take a few days. It might take a few weeks. Okay, but we feel he's going to get out. Somehow he's going to get out of there. Anyway,
Great story.
let's go to the next one. Okay, so this one, I wanted to show you some of the details of this. So could we do that, Dean? So this is a detail of Renee's part on the left-hand side. And in this detail, you can see the use of children's art in this painting. You have to understand that children's art is considered low art, not high art. It's considered like grade B art or grade C art. It's like advertising or something you'd see on television, but I always liked the way it looked. So the combination of the children's art in the painting, to me, seemed very interesting. So this is all painted. This is all entirely painted. And this child was a student in a class that Renee taught. She taught this class as a substitute. And she asked the students to do a drawing which showed what would happen, what would be the effects of pollution on our human species. What would people look like? So this boy did this drawing, and the drawing is probably about 12 inches high. So if you go back, Dean, if you could go back to the previous one. Yeah, you see the drawings on the far left. So that drawing is about 12, maybe 13 inches high. The height of that painting is about just shy of 7 feet. So that drawing is pretty big. Let's go back to that drawing. So these are his conjectures about what will happen to us. And he used ballpoint pen to do this. And I just loved it. So I used this, I painted this to occupy his world.
Puffed up cheeks. Does it say puffed up cheeks to hold some good gin?
Say it again.
Does that say puffed up cheeks to hold some good gin?
To hold,
Air,
to cut down on noise pollution.
No, that's
the other side.
So on the left, it says
Oh,
It's a-
on the left. Oh, yeah, yeah. Wait a minute.
air. Oh,
Air,
good
yeah.
air.
Yes, yes, yes,
He's like,
yes,
this kid is really ahead of his time.
yes, yes. Well, it's his drawing. But I thought the drawing kind of related, it kind of seemed like Picasso and childhood together.
Mhm.
Okay. Um,
Yes, that's true.
so let's see the next one. I mean, the next one on this sequence. So this is the table, close up of the table, and the next one. So this is the plate that's on the table. If you go back one. So on the table, you see instruments. So these instruments are instruments of printmaking, and more specifically, they're instruments of engraving. So you'll see burins, scrapers, burnishers, and they are instruments of engraving that plate. So go to the next one. So this is a painted version of a copper plate. So this is gold leaf and paint and scratched and agitated, and this is a depiction or an attempt to depict a copper plate that is being worked on so it can be printed. This little part is one step away from being in a mental asylum. This is OCD.
Yeah.
Okay, this is really crazy. Go back again one time. Yeah, so that's now, this painting is on display now at the Palmer Museum of Art. And one of the things I told them in showing this painting is that because this is done in gold leaf, the lighting on this should be really good because this should glow, should project forward in front of the rest of the painting. So my thought in doing this was that the plate was the center of the process, the artistic process. This was a birth form. So the vectors in the painting point to this place. All the vectors, the pictures, the landscape, everything points to this. Next one. Next. So this is another detail. And in this detail, you could actually read everything that's on that piece of paper on the bottom. And I've looked at that a few times in recent years, and I can't believe how I did that. I can't believe that I wrote that small. I don't even understand how I got it. Next. In the middle of this is a poem that I like very much that a student wrote in a class that I taught. And I kept that poem with me. I really like it. The poem is her attempt to do haiku poetry and marry haiku poetry with existentialism. And the poem is by a young girl who was 13 named Gloria Mintz. Solitude, gray and sweating, and only one eye person, fighting and fretting. Solitude, gray and sweating, and only one eye person, fighting and fretting. Next one. Oh, by the way, wait a minute, stop. On the top, on the right, is a picture that is in my painting. That's one of the pictures that I sent you. That's a picture by Edwin Dickinson, and it's one of the pictures in the file that I sent you.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting, and I pointed out here. Next one. So these are the children's drawings, so you have oil paint equaling crayon, brush, pencil, tears, flowers. The next one. The only thing I would point out here is the item to the far right on the bottom, which is a Soviet exit visa. I liked the way it looked. It looked like a passport of my mother, a passport that my mother had. Next one. This is not important, but this little review was a summary of a review from the same art critic and appeared for many, many weeks in the New York Times. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so this is, so for me, it would be 1943, still alive, okay? And the next one is Vincent Desiderio, Desiderio, 1955, born 1955, still alive, okay? That painting in the middle is very interesting painting. All these paintings are interesting, but I will just speak about that one for the purpose of time. This painting is called Cocaine. Cocaine, like C-O-C-K or Q, A-I-G-N-E, A-I-G-N-E. And it's modeled after a painting called Cocaine of Bruegel. This is a very large painting. It's about 10 by 12 feet. I mean, very large. So, you know, it's really dramatic in person. Dean mentioned when we were looking at these that this looked a lot like a photograph. I don't think you'd feel the same if you saw it in person.
Yeah.
It's really painted. It's really painted, and has a very high skill level. So the portrait of the artist is in what he is selecting here. And actually the reference to cocaine is an interesting reference because cocaine, the idea here is that in I guess a myth about cocaine, or in the mythology, is the issue of gluttony gluttony and overeating, gluttony, and killing yourself through all of this excess. And I think that is what Desiderio had in mind. Now, the thing that's interesting here for me is that when I first saw this painting, what I thought he had in mind were the influence of visual imagery, and I thought of it as a kind of cousin to my triptych. But he seems to have had the opposite in mind, okay? But I think you can interpret art in many different ways, and you may not be even though you're the artist, you may not have the correct or final word on this. But anyway, it's a very compelling painting. So do you have a question on any of what we've seen so far?
Simon, just one comment on Faith Ringgold, if we could jump back for a second, something I thought was interesting.
Sure.
Especially with her
Sure.
coming to art later in her life,
Sure.
was that she places herself into each of these paintings, right? Presumably, she's the reclining nude on the left and the sort of joyous nude fading into the Picasso painting in the center. And then on the right, I presume she's the figure on the left, which I'm not sure if that's a participant or, or maybe a servant. But with her coming to art later in life, it's saying, here are all these great luminaries, and I'm just throwing myself right in with them. I kind of love
Yes,
it.
that is very interesting. That is very interesting. Now, when I say later in life, I just meant that she did a number of things. She was very deeply interested in art, but she did a number of things to exist, and then the art was done like in the evenings or the weekends or whatever, and then little by little things changed. And they also changed because of her drive, her willfulness, her knuckleheadedness, and this has happened with other people, which I think I can point out. So I think that she would fall under the aegis of Art Saved Me, if you ask me. Another question?
Yes, Simon, I also just wanted to mention that she follows the tradition of African-American quilting, as
Yes.
well as the tradition that women had in this country of quilting, not just African-American women. And I think it's an important comment that she's making, that it's a quilt.
Super. Super. This is Rita?
Yes.
Yes, super. I agree totally. Any other question or point?
Yeah, Simon, this is Alan. Can we look at your triptych for a second? I have a question about it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it seemed to me when I'm looking, and I've seen this a lot, and I actually have seen it in person, but it seems to me to have almost like a medieval, I don't know, it kind of relates to some medieval paintings that I've seen. The kind of the one point perspective of the table, and through the window, what you're seeing through the windows, the
Yes.
flatness of the figures. I
Yes.
mean, was that intentional, or was there what did influence you on this?
I could talk for a long time about this. I'm not sure how long to spend on it, but well, the influence was something I saw, which was the views out the window. And the influence was the table, which I saw, things on the table, but not all those pictures were there, not all those instruments were there. And the part on the left wasn't there, the part on the right wasn't there. So this painting is a kind of collage of a lot of different ideas that are worked together. And so I could agree with your point, Alan. Clearly, I could agree, but the collage element is not part of medieval art.
No, I understand that. I really actually meant just I don't know, the figures, the flatness of Renee and you, and I guess the perspective, which is a little strange, actually. It's a 1-point perspective.
It's definitely 1 point, but it's a moving 1-point perspective. The people are in their own perspective, but that's fine. And it is in 1-point perspective. In my opinion, I didn't know this at this point. I didn't I wasn't kind of thinking about this, but in retrospect, there's a lot of Holbein in this painting. And I didn't put that Holbein in the middle because I thought there was a lot of Holbein in the painting. But that Holbein painting in the middle, is there a detail of that?
Oh, there's a detail in the middle.
Of the one in the middle? Yeah, keep going, keep going. Yeah, see the one on the bottom, on the one on the bottom. That's a painting by Holbein that is in the, I think in Berlin, in the main art museum in Berlin. It's called The Portrait of Georg Giese. And in that painting, Holbein depicts this merchant. And in that depiction, he has the accoutrements of this merchant's life. This is an important painting in German art and just an important painting in art. And I believe for a while this painting, the image of this painting was on one of the German bills, like a 10-mark bill or whatever. But it's a really remarkable painting, great painting. And if you go back to the table, go back to the table. Yeah. So you see in the painting, you see the man, he has in front of him like a tapestry. And then around him, there are all kinds of notes and things. So in a sense, my painting is a kind of grandson of this painting. I don't know if I've answered your question, but I tried, and if I really answered it, we'd go till like 11 o'clock.
That's okay, thanks.
Is that okay for now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other question? Also, Alan, just go back to that piece. Yeah. Also, Alan, the way this painting is built up, the floor, the wallpaper, the impasto on the walls, and the children's drawings, it is acquiescing to certain elements of modernism, modern art and modernism. And so I would like to believe that this is a very modern painting, even though it has older roots. See in the back of where those itchy balls are on the table on the far right, there are pencils that are lined up there, the bottom of pencils that I used to save. And there's a stopwatch. But it appears to be like a Flemish painting. A stopwatch. Yeah. Let's go to the next one. I mean, the next. Oh, is there another question? let's go to the
Yeah.
next artist.
I've
Oh,
had one.
okay. Is there another question?
Yeah,
Rita.
Oh. Okay, the Desiderio, the painting on the right, would you say something about?
Which one? Oh, the one,
Desiderio?
yes, mine. So let's go back
No.
to
No.
The Desiderio painting,
the three of them,
Yeah.
Dean, the three paintings. Thanks for your patience, Dean. You're great. This is great. Do you
Other
want
one.
you want mine? Mine?
No, Desiderio.
Desiderio. Okay. Okay. So the one on the right, I'm not as familiar with as the one in the middle, but the one on the right I uses the same motif as the
Right.
one in the middle with books of fine arts
Mhm.
and this man
In the table.
kind of communing with these books. I don't know much more to say about this. Okay, I would be making it up if I said more. That's how it strikes me. The thing about Vincent Desiderio, which is either depending on your take is either interesting or not interesting, is that part of his mentality is to write about things almost as an art historian. And so there are things that he's written about these paintings which are very complex takes on the paintings. And I don't really look at art in that way. I look at art in more of an instinctive way. So, and maybe that's why I interpret the one in the middle differently than he does. But I would say that it's very important to hear what an artist has to say or a writer has to say about a work of literature or a work of art. But it may not be the last thing. It may not be the last answer. But in the case of the one in the middle, my interpretation of this is 180 degrees different than his point. His point is that there is a surfeit of images and that we're drowning in this. Okay? In other words, his point is a criticism of this. We've had our meal and the meal is overwhelming and we've overeaten and we've overlooked and we're dying. Okay. In my humble opinion, all of these visual images are fascinating and I like them. So I think of those as having the, we're a detective and we're finding out who this person is by looking at these images. Just as in my triptych, you're being a detective and thinking, who is that artist? Who is the person that all those, the matrix of those images are pointing to? Okay, but he, in his writing about this, is very negative. So that's about as much as I could say on the one on the right. And he could probably say more if you look that picture up. All right, so let's go on. I'd like to do one more. Oh, yes, the previous one. Okay, so the next one after this one. So I'm gonna just talk about this and then we'll stop. So these are three paintings by the artist Leonard Anderson. And Anderson's dates are 1928 to 2015. 1928 to 2015.
Oh, no.
So Lenin Innocent was for me a kind of older but contemporary artist who was combining figurative art with something that was more modern, like Gregory Gillespie, like hopefully myself, like Desiderio, and like these. So the shapes in these, the space has a more modern quality to it, possibly influenced by Piero della Francesca and Cézanne. On the one on the right, you could see a self-portrait reflected in that mirror. In the one in the middle, that's an interesting connection to the middle panel of my triptych. Very interesting shapes and spaces. And it's interesting that when you see his work with other contemporary artists, his work is cooler, heading in the direction of Piero 1450, 1460, 1470. And in the one on the left, the picture that he's showing above that woman looks to me like mid-1400s Italian, maybe Piero or a contemporary of Piero. Very beautiful textures and beautiful sense of space in these. And again, what's very interesting to me is this combination of tradition and contemporary. I think that, could we go back to the screen with everyone on it? Is that possible? Oh, great. So I think this is going a little slower than I thought. I'll try to speed up next week, but I think it was as good as I could do, and we'll go faster. And if we need more time, we need more time. But everyone was seemed very involved, and I hope I'm reading you correctly, but that's what I kind of think.
Yeah.
So we'll continue next week. What you're writing about is for week 4, and next week I will be sure to send the right link, and I'm going to send you the if you want to watch the conversation with Peggy Gillespie. I think it's very interesting, and I'll send you the interaction with this poet and art critic, John Yao. Great, really great. Thank you.
Thanks,
Great.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Night.
Great, great. Very enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
I have to think about this stuff.
Right.
Okay. Take care. Take care. Have a great week.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.
Simon.
Yeah,
Bye,
have a great week.
Bye.
Nice seeing
Bye.
you, John. Nice seeing you, Rita.
Same here.
Great contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great.